Did you know that your brain makes up to 35,000 decisions every single day? That is one decision every 2 seconds. It's incredible, but it also means that your mind needs to take shortcuts in order to keep up. And these shortcuts can sometimes lead to surprising or shocking errors in judgment. Today, let's dive deeper into the hidden biases that shape your reality. My name is Kevin, and I have too many interests, not enough time, and a drive to understand the world better. In the last video, we talked about 3 ways our mind tricks us. There was the Dunning-Kruger effect, the illusion of knowledge, and heuristics. And these concepts highlight how our brain can sometimes overestimate what we know and how we process this information. But even though those insights were powerful, they are only the tip of the iceberg. Today, we're going even deeper into those biases that shape our reality. Let's explore now some of the lesser-known biases and heuristics that impact those 35,000 decisions that you are making every day. To make this more impactful and memorable, let's imagine that each of those biases are characters in a drama. And let's see how each of them play a specific role in tricking your mind. To kick it off, let's see how your memory tricks you. And we will call this one the Unreliable Storyteller. Imagine your memory as a storyteller that each time he tells a story again, he adds a few details just to embellish a bit the truth. And the more the storyteller tells the story, the more the story starts to grow until reaching the point of being an odyssey. And now let's go back to the real world. There are many studies lately that have been done that shows that memory works this way. In one of the studies, the participants were asked to recall a day that they spent in a mall. And they were asked details about this story, such as who was with you in the mall, how did you get lost, what did you do? And slowly but surely, the story started to build up. In the beginning, they couldn't remember much, and in the end, they had a whole storyline about it. And the trick, of course, is that this never happened. And this is a dramatic conclusion because there are legal cases that were based solely on reports of memories and testimony of child explaining, for example, that they were abused by someone in the family or that they seen a murder, for example. And it turned out that in some cases, there was no story at all. So people were convicted of a crime they didn't commit just because some psychologist started to ask questions and started to create a story in the mind of the child. And now back to us. It could be that we have very strong memories of our childhood, for example. Maybe someone says that he was in the park and something spectacular happened. But then it could happen that you see a video from this day and you realize that it didn't happen as you thought it did. Or in some cases, it happened, but to someone else. And your memories naturally evolve over time and change until you create this false memory in your head. Let's take a look now at perception. Our perception is reliable, but not all the time. Think of it as an artist, and sometimes a very creative one. And the artist might have a good idea of what he wants to paint, but sometimes he's not sure what should fit in certain places. So he's going to come up with ideas about some details that he's not very sure how it should look like, but it might be good enough. Take the checker shadow illusion, for example. Those 2 squares look like different shades, but they're actually the exact same color. But your brain doesn't accept this. Just as an artist, he sticks with the idea and he believes that it looks differently than it actually does. So even when we see something, it doesn't mean that we can always trust it. And think about the broader implication here. It could be that this bias doesn't only impact what you see, but also how you interact with others. So when you see someone doing something, you will believe that there is a certain intention behind, and is it only your brain that is telling you this? In reality, this person might have a total other intention or no intention at all. So your internal artist sees that, fills in the blank, and sometimes creates misunderstandings. And since we're talking already about intentions, let's look at conspiracies and plots. You have in yourself a little detective. But this detective is extremely paranoid. And that means that when he sees information, he jumps to conclusion very fast. And there is a natural explanation why we have this detective. It's that when we were in our natural state, we needed to detect threats. And so it was good to be a bit paranoid. But in our modern age, we have less of those threats, but the detective remains. So when you're confronted with information which is extraordinary or very rare or shocking, your brain will try to come up with stories and scenarios explaining those. It could be Princess Diana's death, it could be 9/11 or a school shooting. Those events shock us because we're not used to seeing either these horrible events that happen or someone very famous, a princess, dying in a simple car crash. So we come up with ideas of why those things happened. And we get very creative at that. And that leads some of us to those big state plots or conspiracies. As you already know, if you watch my previous videos, we hold onto our beliefs very, very strongly. So for that, imagine that you have your very own defense lawyer. And whenever there is an information that comes in that is trying to challenge one of your beliefs, he is going to give everything he has in order to protect you. His main goal is to leave your worldview unchanged. So if you ever heard someone on a very cold day in the winter using as an argument that global warming cannot be happening because it is currently so cold on this day, and you've wondered, how can you use that as an argument? Well, the reason is they have an extremely good lawyer. And this defense lawyer is not looking for truth. He's building the best case possible for what you already believe. And this motivated reasoning is not only impacting individuals, but also it creeps in public debates, or it creates polarization. It has an impact on our critical thinking as well. Well, the defense lawyer is not the only one trying to keep you on the same tracks as you've been with your beliefs. He has a friend, and it's called the loyal assistant. The loyal assistant is creating what is called cognitive bias. And this is a very, very nice person because it goes outside and looks for information that confirms what you already believe only. Everything that is disconfirming what you currently believe is gonna skip because that might hurt. And so your views will never be contradicted and you will live very happy. Sometimes this loyal assistant is not even in your brain, but is in your phone, because that is what algorithms on social media are doing by bringing relevant and personalized content to you. And soon enough, you end up in an echo chamber where everybody believes what you currently believe. If you're interested in echo chambers and how they form, I have a video about it that I'm going to add in the description. Did you ever realize that you're quite quick to blame when someone is making a mistake? You consider they could have done differently, they're responsible for it. But when it comes to you, you always have an explanation for it. Well, maybe I had other things to do, or it was someone else's task. So it seems like you're excusing yourself because you understand that there were conflicting obligations at the time. But when it's someone else, it is strictly their fault. It was intentional. Well, the person behind that is the harsh judge. And he's going to be very nice with you and very strict with others. If someone cuts you off in traffic, rude, but when it's you, you're just late or you didn't see the car. And so this bias can harm relationships. And it also makes us very pessimistic or negative because we believe that everything bad around the world is intentional. It's just the others that are so mean with me. So now let's zoom out and look at the picture that we've drawn. Look at all these characters in the theater of your own mind. They're all here trying to support you. But unfortunately, even though they have good intentions, it turns out that they have negative impact as well. And realize how sometimes they work closely together and amplify the negative effects. For example, your loyal assistant, cognitive bias, is going to try to get only information that supports your belief. And if he fails sometimes at his job and you find some kind of contradicting information, the defense lawyer will try to build a case against this information. And so it protects you even more and keeps you in your worldview as long as possible. So now we are able to recognize them. But this is not enough because I like to give practical tips. So what can we do to mitigate their influence? One of my favorite books is Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. This is the book that totally changed my worldview and kicked off this interest to understand our world better and how we make our decisions. So he knows a thing or two about cognitive biases and heuristics, because that's what he talks about the whole time in the book. And he was asked at some point by an interviewer, what changed since he wrote and learned about all these biases? And shockingly, Kahneman said, not much. He knows everything about those biases, but every day he's falling in the same old traps. But that is not the end of the world. It simply means we cannot remove them fully, but maybe we can protect ourselves a bit more. The first tip is to prime your awareness. So before making any important decision, review a list of common biases to improve your objectivity. That is a tip that I read in Work Rules by Laszlo Bock. Bock was responsible for the whole human resources of Google. During his time, they realized that people were extremely biased when they hired new employees. For example, the team leads were hiring people that resemble them. So how did they try to fight it? They ensured that during the process, before making any big decision, everyone had to read a list of common biases. And they found out that the negative impact of those biases actually decreased just because of this. Tip number 2 is to embrace metacognition. Metacognition is a fancy, sophisticated term to thinking about your own thinking. So question your assumptions and try to find your blind spots. My favorite example for this one is auditions in orchestras. For maybe centuries, orchestras were composed overwhelmingly of males only. And many believed it was because men are just better musicians. But someone thought maybe there is a blind spot. We need to think about our own thinking here. And so they decided to run the auditions behind a curtain. So nobody would see who was actually playing the instrument. And guess what? More and more women started to get hired. And orchestras starting to reach a parity between gender. And this shows how unchecked bias can influence outcomes, even if you believe at the time that you're unbiased. Tip 3. Actively seek discomfort. We saw how the defense lawyer and the loyal assistant are protecting you against contradicting information. So you will have to do the work yourself to put you out there and seek discomfort. The US military uses what they call red teams to challenge their own strategies. These groups take on the role of the enemy and actively try to find weaknesses in the plans and strategy of the US military. And by doing that, they manage to expose flaws in the strategy before it becomes real-world problem. And in their case, this saves lives. 4. Slow down decision-making. That's an easy one. We are all in a rush. We have all our own problems and priorities. And sometimes we should just take a break and think deeply about the issue before making a decision. Hospitals are doing that, and they call it the timeout protocols, where everybody in the room has to review the critical step to take before the surgery. This simple pause improved dramatically the patient outcomes and the errors and misjudgment made during the surgery. Tip 5. Use the pre-mortem technique. Imagine that your decision has gone wrong and work backward from there to try to identify what actually caused it. That is a standard process from NASA engineers trying to predict how a mission could potentially fail. Before launching a spacecraft, they review everything that could go wrong to try to ensure that everything will go as smoothly as possible. And by being proactive in their thinking, they're able to improve the chances of success of the mission. By applying those tips, you can counter some of the biases that impact all of the decisions that you're making every day. So now think about a recent decision that you've made. It could be where you go for dinner or maybe in a discussion with a friend. some of your opinion? Can you identify any biases that might have influenced your final decision? Once you're getting used to trying to recognize your own biases, it will become a second nature. And at some point, even during a discussion, you will realize that there is a specific bias that is currently impacting you. And that is the first step in improving how we think. So we've explored the hidden biases that impact how we interact with the world and shape our own perceptions. So now, hopefully with those tips, we're empowered to make better decisions and think more clearly. In the next episode, we will go even deeper and try to look at how my perception of the world might be actually objectively different than yours. See you on the next one.